zactrack is often used together with other systems like media servers or automation that also use an XYZ coordinate system. For these systems to work correctly together, their coordinate systems must match. This means they must use the same starting point called the origin and the same directions for the X, Y, and Z axis. If the systems are not aligned, they will not understand each other's position data and they won't work together properly. When zactrack is receiving PSN data from another system, it's important that it correctly understands which direction corresponds with which axis. Different systems sometimes use different ways to organize their coordinate axis. For example, many media servers use X and Z to represent the flat 2D plane and Y for height. This is different from zactrack's setup, where X and Y form the 2D plane and Z adds depth. To make sure zactrack interprets the incoming position data correctly, you can adjust the axis input mapping in the system settings. To access this, tap the 3 dots in the top right corner and open System Settings. Scroll down to the Protocol Settings section. If PSN input is enabled, you will see the Access Input setting at the bottom. By default, zactrack expects incoming PSN data to use X, Y, and Z axis in the same way zactrack does. But if the system sending the data uses a different layout, we need to tell zactrack how to interpret each axis. For example, if the other system uses X and Z as the flat plane and Y for height, you keep the X the same, since both systems agree on it. Then you set the second dropdown to Z, because what zactrack calls Y is actually the other system's Z. Finally, set the third dropdown to Y, because what zactrack calls Z is the other system's Y. This tells zactrack to treat the incoming Z-axis data as its Y, and the incoming Y-axis data as its Z. You might also notice negative options for each axis in the dropdown. These are used when the sending system's axis is flipped in the opposite direction. For example, if their positive Z points down instead of up. After adjusting the axis mapping, press Save at the bottom of the system settings. We've covered how zactrack interprets incoming PSN data with input mapping. Now let's switch to output mapping, how zactrack sends PSN data to other systems. Both settings ensure the coordinate systems match for smooth communication. When zactrack is sending PSN data to another system, it is just as important to make sure both coordinate systems are aligned. This alignment happens through the PSN Fixture Types settings in the Show Editor. When you click on the PSN Fixture Type, you will see several options, including the Axis Output settings. The PSN ID determines what ID is chosen as the PSN ID outputting from zactrack. When set to Fixture ID, the PSN ID will become the FID of the patched PSN fixture. When set to Actor ID, the PSN ID will be the DMX address of the actor. Actor ID is how it worked before version 3.25.10. The Axis output controls how zactrack sends out its PSN data to match the coordinate system expected by the receiving software. Just like with input mapping, different systems may use different orientations for their X, Y, and Z axis. For example, some software uses X and Z as the flat 2D plane and Y for the height, while zactrack uses X and Y for the flat plane and Z for the depth. In Axis output, you will tell zactrack which of its internal axes should be sent as X, Y, and Z to the other system. For example, if the receiving software expects X and Z to be the flat plane and Y as the height, you would set zactrack's outgoing x-axis as X, send its y-axis as Z, and send its z-axis data as y. This ensures the data zactrack sends out matches the system's coordinate orientation exactly. You may also see options to flip the axes by selecting negative versions, like x negative, y negative, and z negative, if the receiving system uses opposite directions. Getting this mapping right is essential for smooth integration because it guarantees that both systems speak the same language when it comes to spatial positioning. The coordinate system is for when the origin of the calibrated tracking system is different from the PSN origin. This will allow you to choose where the origin of the X and the Y are for the other PSN system so the two can work in tandem with each other. And that's it. Once you understand how zactrack defines its coordinate system and how to align both incoming and outgoing PSN data with other softwares, integrating with media servers or automation becomes much easier. Remember, making sure the origin and the direction of each axis match on both input and output sides can save you a lot of time and headaches.